Hi guys. Today we are going to be learning about special quadrilaterals. So today we're focused on topic 15-4. In 15-3 we learned the definitions of the different kinds of quadrilaterals, all shapes that are four sides, and what properties each shape has. Today, I kind of talked about this a little bit in 15-3, but today we're going to focus on how one shape can be called all kinds of names based on the properties that it has. So we're going to focus on that so that you can understand how to do your homework for today. But before we start, I'm going to go over the answers to 15-3. So go ahead and pause if you need to get your workbooks or open up your assignment from Google Classroom so you can go over answers. Alrighty, so for reteaching page, number 1 is a rectangle. So if you notice the shape of, or the properties and dimensions of that shape, it has opposite sides parallel. So top and bottom are parallel, left and right are parallel, and then also opposite sides are equal in length. So top and bottom are the same and side to side are the same, and they also have 4 right angles. So all 4 of those angles are 90 degrees. So the best answer for that shape is a rectangle. For number 2 is a rhombus because opposite sides are parallel. Opposite side, or actually all sides are the same length. And since they don't have 90-degree angles, then the best answer is a rhombus. Number 3 is a trapezoid because only one pair of sides is parallel. If you notice, the left and right lines will eventually meet if we extend them. So the only answer for that is a trapezoid. For number 4, a square is similar to a rhombus because they have the same, or the sides are the same length. The difference is that a square has to have 4 right angles and a rhombus does not. For practice page, number 1 is a trapezoid. Number 2 is a rectangle. Number 3 is a parallelogram. Number 4 is a rhombus. For number 5, all you have to do is name where those line segments meet. So it's F, G, A, L. So all of those little corners are the vertices. For number 6, if you notice, the angles of that quadrilateral is 80, 100, 100, and 80. What kind of quadrilateral has that shape? It would be a trapezoid. Number 7, a trapezoid cannot have 4 obtuse angles because if you had 4 obtuse angles, it would be an open figure. It would be too big to be a quadrilateral, so they wouldn't meet. Alrighty, so if you have any questions on why you might have gotten some of those wrong, please let me know so that we can go over some of your misconceptions. Maybe you're not understanding the definitions of one of these figures, but maybe today's lesson will kind of help you understand a little bit more. But in any case, if you still have questions, please reach out before you do your homework. Okay, let's go over 15-4 now. Please remember it's important to have your notebooks out so you can write notes. So if you need some time to go get those, please pause and then come back when you're ready. And for those of you who are ready, let's go ahead and get started so that we can get through the information. Alrighty, so when we talk about quadrilaterals being special, it just means that there are some shapes, there are some 4-sided figures that are a special case of another shape. That means that it can have more than one name. Although we know shapes with basically one specific name, we usually only call them one specific name. They can be called other things because of the properties that they have. So yeah, in 15-3, we had a checklist. And if that shape meets that checklist, it can be called all of those things. So let's take a look at the different examples, the different types. So when we talk about quadrilaterals, that is the most basic definition of these shapes. And that just means it's a figure with 4 sides. So all shapes with 4 sides can be called a quadrilateral. So for example, a trapezoid can be called a quadrilateral. A rectangle can be called a quadrilateral. A rhombus, a parallelogram, a square, all of them can also be called quadrilaterals. So right off the bat, a trapezoid has 2 names, quadrilateral and trapezoid, okay? And that's because they all have 4 shapes. So now let's look at a trapezoid specifically. So we said that a trapezoid can be called a quadrilateral because trapezoids have 4 sides, but it can also be called a trapezoid when it has only one pair. Okay, so we talked about this in 15-3, that when a trapezoid, or when a shape is considered a trapezoid, that means that only one side is parallel. So in this case, top and bottom are parallel because they will never cross. But these lines on the side, if we extend them, they're eventually going to cross up here. Same thing with the second one. If we extend these lines, they're eventually going to cross, but these over here are parallel. Okay, so when we talk about trapezoids, we can call trapezoids a trapezoid and a quadrilateral, but that's basically it because a trapezoid has 4 sides and only one pair of parallel sides. So none of the other quadrilaterals have properties that a trapezoid has. Okay, let's take a look at a parallelogram. So a parallelogram, the definition says that it has 2 pairs of opposite sides parallel and also are equal. Okay, so that means that opposite sides, you have to look at the opposite sides being parallel and the opposite sides being equal. Doesn't necessarily mean they all have to be, but they can. So for example, let's take a look at a square. A square has opposite sides parallel, and the square also has to have opposite sides equal. So a square can be called a parallelogram. Same thing for a rectangle because opposite sides are parallel, so are these, and opposite sides are equal. So even though this side is longer than this side, it's not its opposite. So all that matters in a rectangle is that the top and bottom are equal and side to side are equal. And because they are, a rectangle can also be called a parallelogram. Okay, for a rhombus is opposite sides parallel, opposite sides equal, but also all sides are equal. So in this case, it can also be called a parallelogram and then just a regular parallelogram. Okay, now let's take a look at a rectangle. So a rectangle means that opposite sides are parallel, opposite sides are equal, but they also have 4 right angles. So normal rectangles as we know them are called rectangles because it meets that criteria, but also has 4 right angles. Okay, even if we put them long ways. But if you notice this shape, this looks more like a square. But because a square has the same properties as a rectangle, opposite sides are parallel, opposite sides are equal, and they have 4 right angles, a square can also be called a rectangle. We just usually don't call it that because there's a better name for a square. Okay, now let's take a look at a rhombus. So a rhombus means that all sides are the same length. It has opposite sides parallel, opposite sides equal, and all sides are the same length. So notice here, opposite sides are the same length, and they're also parallel. They're also equal. Okay, same thing here. but also the square comes up again because a rhombus has to have opposite sides parallel, like a square, opposite sides equal, and since a square has all sides equal, then it can also be called a rhombus. Notice how we don't have a rectangle in here because rhombuses do not have to have 90 degrees. So that criteria does not meet the criteria for a rhombus. And now lastly, let's look at the square. So a square has to have all the qualities of a parallelogram. Okay, it has to have opposite sides equal, opposite sides parallel. It also has to have all sides the same length and 4 right angles. So once it has all of those properties, then we can call it a square. And only this shape can be called a square. Okay, so a rhombus can't be in this case because it doesn't have 90-degree angles. Now let's take a look at these shapes. And what you're going to be doing in your homework is you're going to use as many names as possible to identify these polygons. Okay, so remember these are considered polygons still because they are closed figures made up of lines. Okay, so this first one, if we look at it, we know that the opposite, well, actually first, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. So the first thing we can call it is a quadrilateral. Okay, then we know that the opposite sides are parallel. These sides are never going to touch. These sides are never going to touch. And they're also equal. So opposite sides, the top and bottom are the same length, and side to side are the same length. So that means it can be called a parallelogram. And because this one has right angles, it can also be called a rectangle and a square. Now let's look at this diamond shape over here. It's actually going down the list. It has 4 sides, so it's going to be a quadrilateral. Its opposite sides are equal and parallel. So that means it's a parallelogram. Then it doesn't have 90 degrees angles. So that means it is a rhombus. It can't be a rectangle. And it also can't be a square. So it's just those 3 names. Okay, so for this shape, it has 4 sides, so it's a quadrilateral. It has opposite sides parallel and equal, so it's a parallelogram. Since it doesn't have 90-degree angles, it can't be a rectangle and it can't be a square. And because the top and the side are not all equal, so because all sides are not equal, it can't be a rhombus. So these are the only 2 names that it can be. Now let's take a look at this last one. This is a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides. Opposite sides are parallel and equal, so it's a parallelogram. It has 90-degree angles, so it could be a rectangle. All sides are the same length, so it can be a rhombus. But because it's all sides the same length and right angles, it's a square. Okay, now let's go back and look at the different names that we gave each of these. Out of these names that we gave them, a rectangle is the best answer for here. Out of these names that we gave them, a rhombus is the best answer. From all of these, this is the most specific answer. And from all of these, the square is the best answer. Okay, so in your homework, that's basically what you're going to be doing. You're going to identify and give as many names as possible for the shapes. So because there's many names, there is one that has the most specific name. Okay, kind of like what you did in 15-3. So now you're giving all the names plus the most specific. In the practice page, in reteaching, you are going to fill in all of the lines. So that can kind of help you know that all of those names have to go in there, okay? But for practice, maybe not all of them are going to be filled in. So for example, number 4, 5, and 6 will not all be filled in. So if there's only a certain name for that shape, then just give me that 1 or 2 or 3 names that it has. Okay, so don't think you need to fill it all in for practice. Just make sure that you're filling in the correct names. Alrighty. So again, if you have questions, please let me know before you get started on your homework. But also know that if you get started on your homework later in the day, like 5 p.m., I don't really see your messages until the next day. So try your best to get through your homework earlier in the day so that I can better assist you throughout the day and give you some attention throughout the day. Alrighty? We will be going over 15-5 on Monday, and from there we are going to review. So you will have a quiz on Friday of next week. So Friday, May 1st of next week, you will have a quiz on this. But we'll get to it when we get to it. Alrighty. So I'll talk to you later. Have fun on your homework. Bye.